Welcome to the Floyd Memorial Library podcast, where we sit down with the people who give shape, texture, and voice to life on the North Fork of Long Island. Some are rooted here by generations, others arrive by chance or choice, but all carry with them a piece of the story. We talk about what's changing, what's worth holding on to, and the currents of history, both quiet and loud, that run through this place. I'm your host, Christopher Bianchi, and for episode 163, I'm joined again by Dan Goodwin, Southold Town Highway Superintendent. In our last conversation, we talked about his family's history on the North Fork and his journey into public service. This time, we focus on the work of the Highway Department over the past year, the projects completed, the challenges faced, and how his team has responded to the unexpected. With elections coming up in November, Dan also reflects on the department's biggest accomplishments during his tenure, his priorities if reelected, and how he sees Southold transportation needs evolving in the years ahead. It's a chance to hear directly from the Highway Superintendent about what goes into keeping the town running smoothly and what he wants residents and voters to understand about the department's work. So I hope you enjoy episode 163 with Dan Goodwin. This episode was recorded September 10th, 2025. Thank you so much for coming back on the Floyd Memorial Library podcast today. It's really great to have you back on today.
I appreciate that, Chris. Thank you for sending the invite out to come back. It's always good to get out and get what we got going on out to the public, and great to catch up with you as well.
Thank you. And so I'd like to just start off, since our last conversation, what projects or initiatives has the Highway Department completed that you're most proud of?
You know, we have a lot of work going on every time of year. Really changes a little bit seasonally, obviously. So going back to the start of the new year here, we had a little bit more active winter than we had in years past. I would say probably pretty average amount of salt sand treatments out on the roads. But we were able to continue doing some work through the winter with some drain installs, some tree takedowns, things of that nature, which is good because it was pretty mild. So that's always an advantage when we can kind of keep working with that stuff when it's not too cold. So then once we get into the spring, that's when things really start turning around for the department. We have almost 7 miles of snow fence out there that needs to come down. We do the annual spring cleanup, townwide spring cleanup, which this year started out on the west end of town in Laurel. And right behind that, we start, sweeping the roads one road at a time until it's completed and continue working east. Once the cleanup crews sort of get done, we start working on prepping roads for paving, doing additional tree takedowns, getting everything sort of in top shape for the summer. And then once we get into the summer, we're full-blown road work, drain installs, tree takedowns, tree trimmings, road repairs, paving, and all the stuff that comes along with it, all the roadside mowing, sweepers going out every single day, the summer garbage route on all our roads ends and beaches that we pair up with DPW on, and just all our general maintenance in between and dealing with the inevitable variables that do pop up on a daily basis.
Yes. And what do you think was one of the biggest challenges from last year that you addressed?
Every year things kind of change, it seems like, as far as what seems to be a bigger challenge, perhaps. This year, we're kind of enjoying some of the fruits of the labor of having a lot of drainage systems been installed in the last few years, where when we have these heavy downpours of rain, some of these worst flooding issues that we've had are not really there anymore. We did have an instance, an unexpected one out on Love Lane, very old drainage system out there. Something became lodged in one of the pipes in that area, and we were dealing with some flooding issues out on Love Lane for a little while. We were able to remove most of the blockage, and we installed some additional drainage out there, to alleviate the pressure on some of these things. Unique situation with that one, too, was, we determined some of the issues there were caused by New York State and their lack of maintenance on 25. So just interfacing with them to get them to help out. And we've so far had a positive result from all of that, which has been good. Other than that, we're actively removing dead trees and dangerous trees, around town. But now we're at a point where we've dealt with a lot of private property trees coming out into the public right of way, which, is a bit of an issue. There's people that have these situations on their private properties. There's nothing we can do about it because the tree is on private property. But obviously, if a tree that's grown, 40, 50 feet tall and it's only 15 feet off the property line, when it comes down, it can be across the road. So we've had a fair amount of those this year, especially because, we had a pretty dry season here. So some of the trees that were under stress already have kind of succumbed to that stress sooner than they maybe would have normally. There's also several, invasive pests that are out here now that are killing off certain species of tree. So there's been an uptick in that. And unfortunately, like I said, with them being on private property, there's only so much that we can do with them, and a lot of time, and we just have no recourse but to deal with it should something happen. So
Yes.
Those are kind of completely random scenarios. We can have a day where we have 30-mile-an-hour winds for 2-3 days in a row, and we don't lose anything. And then the wind finally lets up, and 2 hours later, when it's still as can be, the tree will fall down. Mm-hmm. It's pretty interesting. So, those are the things. The best we can do is respond when it happens.
Yes. Oh, I think we're almost, I don't want to say yet, but with...
Don't say it. Don't say it. We're not there yet.
We're not through.
But we're definitely on the downslope at this point. So,
Yes.
Yeah, every day as we get deeper into the season, the likelihood sort of decreases. The water temperature gets a little bit cooler each day, and that certainly helps us avoid the big H word.
Yes.
But Sandy came through a couple days before Halloween, so we're not truly out of it. And to be quite honest, we've had some pretty bad nor'easters in the almost 4 years that I've been doing this that caused flooding and damage worse than some of the hurricanes that we have had in recent years. So, but yeah, you're 100% right. I mean, this time of year, we're no more than a week away potentially from something major like that happening. But the town is in very good shape. We've been very active with emergency management, town emergency management, having meetings behind the scenes, organizing shelters, volunteers, reaching out bilingual to get that information out to everybody in our community. And operationally, we're in a very good position. Us in the police department, very close ties there to work together and make sure that public safety would be a priority in situations like this. And then we're nearly done with a flood mapping project here in town that we embarked on to sort of show best of worst case scenario flooding, I guess you could say. So, we have a lot of low-lying areas. There's a lot of homes that live within those areas. We have over 200 miles of shoreline in Southold. And just letting people that live in these areas and rely on some of these roadways that get into these areas to know, like, yeah, you might own a house that's on a hill on this peninsula, but the roadway that you take to get in there, or the two roadways that you take to get in there, are at an elevation less than 5 feet, which makes for a beautiful ride in. Mm-hmm. But in times of high tide, storm tide, wind-driven tide, you might have some access issues, and you should be aware of that going into a storm of any sort of magnitude. So we've tried to quantify what the conditions are that surround those areas sort of being impacted, and then very clearly represent that on a map so that everybody can kind of have an idea as to what the effects might be based on some of those conditions. And then they can plan for, a reroute, or just understand that during these times of high tide or wind tide, you might have to be on the high ground for a day or so before the storm moves away and the access through the road is open back up again.
Yes. And I think you mentioned last year how residents can get in touch with you and call or send feedback.
Sure.
What have you been hearing from residents over at least this year so far?
Yeah, I mean, the best way to always get in touch with us, especially if you have something that's going on that needs attention right away during hours, is always call the highway office. We've got two main call-in numbers, 631-765-3140 and 631-734-5211. And anything outside of what would be considered a normal hour, or if there's something that's really severe, like an electric line down or something like that, you're best to call 911. But, when people call in, we get a lot of questions about general maintenance related stuff. When's my road going to get paved? There might be a pothole here. This tree doesn't look so good. Or we have just general inquiries about, hey, when do you think that this area is going to be dealt with, or this project's going to be taken on over here? And sometimes people just call to ask for general information about the spring or fall cleanup, and that usually happens months in advance. So you never quite know what you're going to get. But when we do have the opportunity to speak with the residents, a lot of people will call and they're upset about something. They're emotionally charged about something. And it's nice to be able to kind of talk to them, listen to what their problem is, come out and take a look at the problem. Typically, we try to set up a meeting that works for the resident that has the issue, and come out and look at it exactly what they have going on versus what they're describing, because a lot of times people have different ways of looking at problems and describing what the problem might be, and it's not necessarily being communicated correctly, or the problem is slightly different than what the cause of the problem is slightly different than what maybe they think it is. So we're always more than happy to come out and meet and look at the site. Everything that we do really is pretty site specific. So we get a request for a tree takedown because it has a broken limb or it's got a disease or something's going on with it. Coming out and determining where those property lines are. Is it our tree? Is it a private tree? Is it something where we need to get the utility involved to take it down because it's too close to the wires? There's a lot of factors that go into it. And that's really the case with all of the work that we do, Mm-hmm. So it's good because it gives a really good opportunity for us to connect and listen to our residents, and then have a good conversation with them about what they see the problem is, what we see the problem is, and then what the causes are and what the remedy and what the expectation of how it can be fixed and when it can be fixed.
Yes, definitely. And we're coming into election season now. What priorities would you like to focus on if you're reelected?
Sure. So a big part of what I saw that was lacking in the department when I got there was preventative and forward-looking maintenance. I would much more rather be proactive and prevent these issues from happening rather than sort of responding to them when they happen, which is why we've put such a big push on installing drains, taking down trees, trimming, for clearance, switching to a hot patching asphalt technique, which was used in the past, but purchasing the proper equipment so that we're able to do it, for an expanded period of time throughout the course of the year. Investing the extra time to make the repairs the right way, meaning cut out the bad area and recompact and start with a larger repair that will hold together rather than just fill a hole. So really it's been a more of a forward thinking, let's get out ahead of these problems to reduce our overall problems, which then will free up more crew time to be able to go out and work on some improvements that we can make. So we're kind of, you're never really caught up. And the moment, there's been several people that are, oh, don't use up all your work. And it's like, we never will. We have over 400 miles of lane miles of road in our network, and there's so much to do. I mean, there's tree trimming is endless. Road paving, there's never enough money in the year to do everything that you want to do. Drains, there's always going to be a new drain that needs to be installed or stuff that needs to be serviced. And then you have sidewalks. There's 30 plus miles of sidewalk in town that we have to deal with as well. So there's everything that goes along with those, total replacements, panel replacements, trimming the sidewalks, edging the grasses back, making sure that everything's easily accessible for everybody. And then there's all the back end of it, all the budgeting, the equipment, keeping the fleet running and coming up with a sustainable fleet replacement plan. And then something that I've been getting particularly involved with in the last 2.5 years really heavily is lobbying up in Albany to get us some more state aid and reaching out through our state level representatives and joining forces with colleagues in the rest of Suffolk County through the Highway Superintendents Association, which I'm the first vice president of, to get us more money to do more road projects out this way, because we sorely need it. And, Long Island is an economic generator. We do have the highest population densities mostly. We have the most registered vehicles in Suffolk County of any other county outside of New York City. So there's a lot of metrics that these aid programs are formulated with, and many of them are severely outdated. Particularly, I mean, look at what our population is, here in 2025 versus some of the populations that are being used in some of these aid programs that are from the late 70s. So tremendous difference in population in an area such as ours. And these aid programs really help. So, I mean, we do an annual trip to Albany for an advocacy day. There's around 900 highway superintendents in New York State. And this year, I think about 650, 675 of us went up there to meet with representatives to discuss the state budget and what we need to see, in there as far as funding. Thing that was particularly frustrating for our group this year was, New York State was willing to sort of acknowledge inflationary costs of construction because they granted the New York State DOT an $800 million increase in their budgets for their road maintenance, but neglected to kind of pass that along to the local municipalities, which would be us, the village of Greenport, Town of Riverhead, Southampton, East Hampton, etc. So we're just making sure that we have a voice, and particularly a local voice up there to get what we need to provide these services to our residents.
Are there other outside of the state? Are there other grants that?
So grants for road resurfacing projects, not so much, but you can get other grants for sidewalks and things of that nature. We have a sidewalk project here not too far from the library in the town portion of Greenport, which will be kicking off in October. And that was a grant in partnership with Suffolk County. So we do get some of those things, but a lot of the grants, unless they're part of like a major reconstruction project of like an area, a lot of times the road surface is sort of left out of it, even some of the grants that we get for doing drainage work. A lot of times, if there's patching that's required as part of the drainage install, they will cover that on the asphalt, but they're not going to give you $100,000 to install a $10,000 drain because, $90,000 of it is repaving a half a mile of road in each direction. So, but you can get a small portion back for, patching in the immediate area there. So,
yes,
yeah,
definitely.
They kind of defer to the local, municipalities to provide that budget, which all of the state aid programs are sort of designed to be a partnership with your local municipality. So the other component of this is me advocating locally to our town board, hey, we need to get some more money into our capital paving account, which I have been able to do, which is good. And another thing that I'm very proud of is that I actually created a separate capital line just for Fisher's Island. Fisher's Island has pretty unique challenges over there, particularly with the cost of construction there being nearly 4 to 5 times what it is here on the mainland. So how can we create an account for Fishers that they can save has accountability there and transparency of, look, there's this much money in the till for a road project on your island, but not being underwritten by the greater portion of the taxpayers, in mainland Southold. So we've created an account for them that essentially acts like a savings account year after year. The money builds up and they get a project of a sizable proportion when there's enough money there, because there's economies of scale of purchasing asphalt as well. So it's been successful. We've done some paving out there. They're rebuilding. We did some paving out there last year, so they're rebuilding their account now. But we do have a really nice sidewalk project that was just awarded at last night's town board meeting. Okay. That'll be done by the end of the year. So about 0.6 of a mile of new sidewalk going down on Fisher's Island this year, which is really, really nice. And that sort of plays towards a broader overall long-term road rebuilding project. So this sidewalk project is going to address not only the sidewalks, but also all the drainage systems that are underneath those sidewalks in that 0.6 of a mile section. And it brings those sidewalks up to ADA compliance, which is, required when we're going to be doing a major alteration, aka repaving the road. So this is sort of phase 1 in getting that road ready for resurfacing on the island. And this is a strategy that we've been mimicking across town here on the mainland. successfully. And it's nice. So then when we're done, the trees are trimmed, the sidewalks are put in, and they're all brand new or repaired to the spec that they need to be. And then the road is resurfaced as like the final icing on the cake. And the idea being that, the hard infrastructure in those areas is good for a couple decades with obviously regular maintenance, but and really all we should have to kind of come back and do are the tree removals as trees live and die, and general tidying up of the sidewalks, general drain maintenance, pothole repairs as the road ages, and gets further down the line. Looking at the road system as a system and not just a piecemealed sort of thing. So looking to just keep building on that and doing more of it. We have a lot of work to do, a lot of stuff to get caught up here in town, and we've accomplished a lot, but there's a lot more to go.
Yes, and it's probably just prioritizing the list of what needs to be done first, and
the big thing with that, another thing that I am really proud of is that we work better with our utility partners now than we ever have, and there's advantages for us to do that. So, there's a road in Mattituck that's the shining example of this, Bay Avenue, which National Grid, prior to my tenure, came down and did a directionally drill project to install a new high-pressure gas main. When they did that, their restoration efforts were lacking at best, I'll say that. They were allowed to essentially patch holes back where they opened up the road. They weren't forced to adhere to what the town code is for the road opening permit, which is issued by the Highway Department and signed by the Highway Superintendent. And that created a surface that was extremely uneven and got worse when, freeze and thaw cycles happened in the wintertime. So my first year, we took that road on as we need to do something with this, and it had sidewalk, had an extensive amount of sidewalk. We knew it had more sidewalk on it than we had budget for in 1 year. So we came through, we did drainage work. We installed as much sidewalk as our budget would allow that year, knowing that we were going to come back the following year and finish off the sidewalk and pave the road. So we came back in of probably July or August of that second year, finished off the sidewalk to get it ready for paving in the fall. And we got an emergency permit from National Grid after having a meeting with them earlier in the year of, hey, we're going to be paving this road. After we pave this road, you're not getting a permit on it to open it unless something happens. So they applied for an emergency road opening permit. They had a gas leak on the road. After they responded to the gas leak, we get a call from National Grid saying, we need to replace this main. It's at a point where it was on a list for 10 years out, but the condition of it after seeing this repair that was made, it needs to be bumped up. Can you hold off on paving the road? Which I really didn't want to do, but I knew it was the best thing. They said that they were going to do it the following year in the spring. The spring came and went. They never did it. They started very late in that year after the summer. Part of that being at our request. It's a very busy area. One of Mattituck Park District's premier park is right in the immediate vicinity of where they're working. So we asked them to wait till after the summer season, to which they agreed. By the time they were done with all their processes, we were a bit late in the paving season to where to take on a project of that size was just not going to happen. So we ended up pushing it and finally paving it this year in the spring. But the blessing in disguise of that is we ended up having control over their restoration, and we ended up getting, reimbursed money from them to put towards the restoration of that because of the damage that they did to the roadway. So yeah, it pushed us off a little bit. We had to sort of tend to the road longer than we wanted to, and it was bumpy, and we had to have some conversations with homeowners on there that thought, saw all this other good stuff going on. But now that the road's been done and it's beautiful, we know that Suffolk County Water Authority, the main there is in good shape, and we know that it's got brand new gas main on it. Now that's, the comprehensive picture like I'm talking about of a road system sort of aging together, all at once can kind of come together. And we have that great relationship now with the Water Authority and National Grid where we can have the open communication in the beginning of the year of we're looking to go here, where are you doing projects? And we can kind of push things around a little bit. And it's a powerful communication tool. When we have people, we have a community in Southold that we were planning some work on. We found out that there was an old type of pipe called transite pipe in the ground there for water reached out to Suffolk County Water Authority, said, hey, where are you guys at on getting this main replaced and upgraded? Because they're putting a big push on replacing those water mains because of their lifespan of that material. And now they start leaking more and creating issues for them. And they came back and said, well, we don't have money for the road resurfacing this year, portion of it. If you guys could do it, we didn't have money for it because it was not something in our planned work for the year. They came back with a capital plan for this year to replace it and then handle the resurfacing on the road at our discretion of when that is done. And they just got done installing 4,000 feet of main over there. So that's nearly a mile, 3/4 of a mile of roadway that'll get paved on their dime and not the Southold town taxpayers. So that's a win for us. Yeah. And we'll be able to get in there and do some work in the meanwhile before the repaving is done. So we'll take full advantage of that. But there's a lot of opportunity with good open communication between all of our partners where we're sharing interest in working within this right of way that it can pay out dividends for everybody, including our residents,
Yes. And I think we talked about it last time, but I forgot, is it you work with the Suffolk County because do they maintain one of the north? Is it the North Road?
Yeah, so North Road, County Road 48 is Suffolk County DPW, and then New York State 25 is quote unquote the main road. And that's
the South Road.
The South Road that runs through all the hamlets and then actually comes up through Greenport here. And then 25 continues out from where the new traffic circle that New York State DOT is reinstalling, I'll say, because there used to be one there years and years and years ago, out to Orient Point to the ferry terminal. So yeah, in those areas, they handle all of their maintenance and stuff out there. But if we see things or we get stuff reported, we pass that along, and we have some good contacts with the county that are able to help us out. And the state, launched a new system about 6 months ago now called the Inform system. And their responses to some of the issues have been better on certain things. Certain things they're still a little bit tough on, but we keep on them until we know that they're resolved.
Yes. And you mentioned with just material and equipment and inflation, is that something that in the future, are there other equipment that you'd like to
so
upgrade?
Our fleet, not so surprisingly for people that see us operating out there, is in pretty tough shape. Highway equipment costs a lot of money to buy, own, operate, and maintain. And it's got to be done in a thoughtful process. So part of my budgeting since the very first budget I put together is I have a capital equipment purchasing plan that looks out at any given point in time, 5 years of where we're going. And, in August, we sit down with the town supervisor and put together our preliminary budget. And the highway budget total, including our paving and our state aid programs, is north of $8 million, $8.4 million. And we sit down in August and we say, this is what we have. This is what we have for projects we'd like to do. Our operating budget has stayed pretty steady in my 4 years. The only thing that we had to bump up a little bit would be our fuel, because there was a pretty significant, fuel increase that everybody's obviously aware of. It's moderated a little bit, but operating wise, we've kind of trimmed it down and kept it pretty tight. And when we have a surplus at the end of the year, that money goes back into a highway fund, since the Southold Town Highway Department doesn't provide service to the village of Greenport. We're a part-town fund. So since that money was collected for use in the highway network, it can only be spent for use in the highway department. So we look at doing that, and what we've been doing is picking off some one-off projects across town that need a little bit of extra funding, handling those as special projects, and using a portion of that money to go towards equipment. So we've upgraded. We've been able to bring in a good mix of new and used equipment. I mean, we have trucks, larger dump trucks with snow equipment, so sanders and plows we've brought in. We've brought in, sort of the smaller medium-duty trucks. We've brought in a couple pickup trucks for foreman-style, response trucks, small tools, chainsaws, and things of that nature to continue our tree work, because these tools, they wear out as you use them. And happily, we've been using them. So... Yes. And then investing in some newer things I mentioned before, the hot asphalt. We purchased it's called a hot box. It's basically a trailer mounted unit think of it like a big thermos for your coffee, has a burner on it that maintains that hot asphalt at 250 degrees, if that's what you want to maintain it to, or slightly lower, slightly higher, so that we can transport it in the winter months and keep it workable all day long for us. Mm-hmm. So just looking at how do we sustainably plan for the future using this money that we have on hand, particularly because that money has zero tax impact to the residents because it's money that's already been collected and needs to be put to use for highway use. That's what it was collected for. And these are operating things. So think of things like we had $120,000 budgeted for fuel, let's say, for the year. Mm-hmm. And we spent $110,000 of it because we didn't need to go out and respond to, a hurricane this year. Or we had a little bit less snowfall than we thought and we didn't burn as much fuel. So that $10,000 will accumulate in the fund account and then we can use it from there, and there's minimums that are set forth by our local comptroller's office as well as the New York State comptroller's office in relation to your total overall budget as like your rainy day account, which is obviously a sustainable thing. So staying within those parameters and just using it smartly where we can kind of piece together some pieces of equipment to be able to keep providing services that we need to do. Mm-hmm. And we've done that through a mix of buying new stuff, new trucks, new payloaders, adding key pieces like that hot box, sidearm tractor. We have one that should be delivered here in the next week or two, because we have quite a variety, but then also taking advantage of purchasing some used equipment at reduced rates, when we have the opportunity. Established a pretty good relationship with one of our neighbors to the south, town of East Hampton, where we've been able to purchase a couple of really nice trucks from them that they bought new. And, they have the luxury of a very large tax base and they have an in-house policy that they get rid of their trucks when they are 10 to 12 years old. So, mm-hmm. These two last ones that we got from them came to us. They are 10 years old this year. They got rid of them because they were somewhat unique to their setup, being that they're CDL trucks. They actually have a lack of CDL drivers in their department. So they were the two older CDL trucks that they have, but each one of them had right around 10,000 miles on them. So mm-hmm. they're essentially a new vehicle, just 10 years old. So they had a few bumps and bruises on them from being 10 years old. But as far as lifespan, they're going to live a pretty long life here at Southold Highway.
Yes, definitely. And it's not directly related to the work within the highway department, but how do you envision Southold's transportation needs evolving over the next decade, and what role will the highway department play in that?
Yeah, so the biggest thing that we kind of have that we're facing as far as transportation needs, I sort of already touched on with our local flood mapping. The county was out a couple weeks back to a town board meeting with us, and I was very happy to learn that the county has some money in the budget for next year to start design services to raise a section of Route 48 in the area of Town Beach, or George Sullivan Beach as it's known now, which is a very low section of them. And they actually ranked it within the top 3 of problem areas in the county. Wow. So, that's going to be a coastal resiliency type scenario there where you have Long Island Sound is very close, Ashamomic Pond is very close. And it's sort of, there are houses on the south side there, and there's a parking lot on the north for the beach, but it's almost like a causeway type scenario. And that's how they're starting to look at it. So we obviously have roads that intersect there. We have a town facility in the beach that's right there that's going to be impacted with it. But we also have these scenarios around our roads, our local roads that are going out to these peninsulas or waterfront neighborhoods. So that's something that we're paying very close attention to as we're paving areas that are in these areas of what can we do to raise this section of road, and everybody kind of has their own idea of what raising is. But, if we can bring it up a foot and not have any adjoining neighborly impacts and not impact anybody's property, and that provides us what we need, because we know that the road floods 6-8 inches of salt water right now when we have these lunar easterly wind-driven high tides. Mm-hmm. It kind of gets us where we need to be with a minimal investment now, and it should last us for what the life expectancy of that that surfaces. And if we need to address it higher in the future, we can, based on what the conditions are at that point, right? Because that's sort of like a moving ball. Nobody quite knows how high is going to be high enough or not at this point, but that's a good example of being proactive instead of reactive to it. We're gonna proactively raise this section of roadway to stop this flooding issue instead of
waiting.
The road's flooded. We need to go put some barricades out.
Yes.
So it was really encouraging to see that the county is taking that sort of leadership responsibility also and identifying these issues before it is an issue, because that's one of our main arteries from points east. The other is being 25, sort of just due south of that is same area there in the area of by like Port of Egypt Marina, in that area.
Yes.
Albertson's Marine. So 2 weeks ago, I had Tommy John Schiavone out for a ride along with me as a follow up to a meeting that we had with him with some of the members of the OEM in Southold. And brought him out to these places and showed him what we were talking about. And we toured areas, all along 25 out to Orient Point, and I showed him, areas of particular concern that we have. And he's going to be working with New York State DOT to hopefully get the ball rolling on something similar there, so that they can address some of these issues for us.
And I think they have talked about even out by Orient too, that section.
So New York State DOT did do a project out there back at the turn of the year. And that was a spot where, you talk about Highway Department needing to be involved locally, Southold Highway Department. And we did, because that intersects with Land's End Road, which is one of our neighborhood's local road out there. And they came back a substantial amount, a few hundred feet up into our road system. So we reviewed all those plans and we worked with them. We had all the meetings with the engineers out there from New York State and the contractors, and, liaised between everybody to make sure that everybody's goals were going to be met there, as well as, our residents that have their homes there weren't going to be negatively affected in any way. And they did raise the road out there. They installed all new drainage, and it was a nice project. And so far, we've been in good shape. That was a problem area, that would tidally flood. And knock on wood, so far it's held up to everything that's been thrown at it since probably about March when the project was completed.
Yes. And I think just the last question would be, what message would you like to share with the Southold community as they head into election season?
I would say, as much as the community's been able to see the work that we've done in the last 4 years, we're on track to do somewhere north of 45 lane miles of paving by the end of the year based on the money that we have on hand. Over 120 plus drainage systems have been installed in the last 4 years. 1.5 miles plus a sidewalk, not including the large sidewalk project here on Fishers that just got approved 2 nights ago. And some other stuff that we have planned here in Greenport that's going to kick off by the end of the year, about another 1/4 mile or so. So nearly 2 miles of sidewalk replaced entirely, as well as all the maintenance. There's a lot that we're doing behind the scenes also that's not the quite the visual stuff, So, the superintendent, with the budget, managing an $8+ million budget, with the town board, working with them to do this in a sustainable fashion that doesn't kill everybody on their property taxes every year, working with our partners in New York State to make sure that they're maintaining their roads to the standards that we hold ourselves to here locally. The same with the county. The county does a very good job, but maintaining a good open relationship with those folks out that way. And then, heading up to Albany and joining partnership with our other local municipalities out here to get additional sources of funding out here so that we can all keep progress moving forward for us and getting this critical infrastructure rebuilt, and making sure our utility partners are doing the right job for us as well, holding them accountable. So, accountability, transparency, and competency in the department is really what I see myself bringing to the place, and just making sure that everybody is there to do the best thing for the taxpayers, because that's really what it's all about.
Yes, definitely. No, but I want to thank you for taking the time to come back on today and share everything the department has been doing and, your continued work in the community. So thank you so much for coming on.
I appreciate that, Chris. Thanks for coming back, and hopefully we'll see you again next year for another update.
Yes. Well, I hope you enjoyed episode 163 with Dan Goodwin. I want to thank you for listening to the Floyd Memorial Library podcast, and we'll see you next time.